In this lesson, we're going to take a look at multiplying fractions. There's really three steps. You multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, and then reduce if necessary. So in this example of 4/10 times 5/8, I would multiply the numerators, 4 times 5, and then multiply the denominators, 10 times 8, which gives me 20/80ths. Now they both have 20 as a factor, so I divide the top and bottom by 20, and I end up with 1/4 as my final answer. Here's another example, 3/4 times 2/3. Following the directions above, I know that I need to multiply my numerators together and multiply my denominators together. And so my numerator would be 6, my denominator would be 12. Now the last step is to reduce the fraction, and I can on this one. Since 6 is half of 12, my final answer reduces down to 1/2. Now the two examples I showed you followed these steps in order. But what if I told you you could take this last step, reduce if necessary, and do that first? So in my first example of 4/10 times 5/8, I could actually reduce 4/10 to 2/5. That leaves my equation as 2 times 5 over 5 times 8. Multiplying that out, I get 10/40ths, which reduces down to 1/4. Now that's the same answer that I got before, but I just did my reducing, a little bit of my reducing, ahead of time. Here's another example where I can actually reduce first. So I've got 4/6 that reduces down to 2/3, and I have 2/8 which reduces to 1/4. Multiplying that out, I get 2 times 1 for my numerator and 3 times 4 for my denominator. 2 times 1 is 2, 3 times 4 is 12. They're both even, so I can cut them both in half and get 1/6 as my final answer. So this shows that I can reduce both fractions ahead of time to make my final answer become lowest terms as soon as possible. Now it's your turn. Multiply 3/4 by 4/8. Multiply your work, get your answer, and then compare it to my answer. Pause the video now and do the work. If you got 3/8, you did the problem correctly. Notice over on the left that I reduced my fraction 4/8 to 1/2. That allowed me to multiply by smaller numbers, making it easier to get the final answer. So there you have it. Those are the basic steps for multiplying fractions. You may choose to reduce any fractions ahead of time, or to simply follow the steps in order as they are listed here. The choice is yours. Now, if you want to try something that's a step above this, keep watching the video and I'll show you another way that you can multiply fractions and make your job easier to get the final answer. The strategy I'm going to show you now is called cross-canceling or diagonal reducing. We're going to take a look at our fractions 4/10 and 5/8. Now, I could reduce the fraction 4/10 first. I could reduce that down to 2/5. But we're going to do something different. We're going to look diagonally at these numbers. You have a 4 in the numerator, and diagonally you have an 8 in the denominator. If I looked at that as a fraction, it would be 4/8. And I could reduce 4/8 to 1/2. Now, I can look diagonally from the upper right to the lower left and see that as a fraction 5/10. I could look at that and reduce 5/10 to 1/2. Now it becomes a matter of multiplying my numerators together, 1 times 1, and then my denominators, 2 times 2, and I end up with 1/4. Now that's the original answer that I got from that fraction, multiplying those fractions, but I got it by doing something called cross-canceling or diagonal reducing. Let's try that again. Here's an example of 3/4 times 2/3, and I can't reduce my fractions ahead of time because they're already reduced. but I can try the strategy of cross-canceling or diagonal reducing. In this case, I'm going to look diagonally from the top left to the lower right, and I see that I have 3 over 3. They both have 3 as a factor, so I can divide both the top and the bottom by 3 and get 1 over 1. Now, looking diagonally from the upper right to the lower left, I see 2 over 4, or 2/4. I know I can reduce that to 1/2. Now it gives me a lot easier numbers to multiply. In fact, my numerator would be 1 times 1. My denominator would be 2 times 1. So my final fraction, my final answer, would be 1/2. Now if I solved my original equation, my original problem, following the steps above, I would have 3 times 2, which is 6, and then 4 times 3 is 12. I recognize that 6/12 can be reduced to 1/2. I still get the same answer, but in this case I did my reducing of the fractions at the end, whereas if I did cross-canceling or diagonal reducing, I would do that reducing ahead of time. Now it's entirely up to you how you choose to multiply your fractions. You can follow the steps in order, or you can reduce your fractions ahead of time if possible, or you can also look for the possibility of diagonal reducing or cross-canceling. That's up to you. Okay, practice this strategy as many times as you need to get a good understanding of it. Pause and play the video as many times as well to get a good understanding, and I'll see you in the classroom.